Hi everyone from Giaco. After living over a decade in Finland, I decided to help building a bridge between the English-speaking people living in Finland and the local community. Listen to my podcast to discover the most interesting and incredible people from Finland and to dig into Finnish culture and controversial issues that impact all of us in our daily life. And now sit back and enjoy listening. Bye! Hi everyone. The following is a conversation with the powerful Risto Siilasmaa. Risto is an icon of the Finnish business world. He has begun growing his own company F-Secure to the stock market, and he has been part of the process of reinventing Nokia to a new success story. He is humble, curious, and he wants to make an impact on the world to create better value for better society with happier people. I enjoyed this conversation deeply, and I respect this knowledgeable person. Please enjoy. Hi Risto.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. So, can you please state who you are? And I'm waiting to listen, like how you describe yourself.
Well, I'm a Finnish entrepreneur. I started my cybersecurity company when I was 21, a second-year student at the Helsinki University of Technology. The company is called F-Secure. Now we have actually split it into two. There's a WithSecure and F-Secure. Both are publicly listed companies on the Helsinki exchanges. And I'm chairman in one, board member in one, and the largest shareholder in both.
Mm. And you were 21 when you started?
I was 21 when I started, yes. In a Finland that was very different from what Finland is like today.
How so?
Well, back then, an entrepreneur was basically by definition somebody who couldn't get a proper job. There was absolutely no respect and no appreciation for entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
My own feeling about entrepreneurship was exactly that an entrepreneur is somebody who, when they grew up, they fixed cars, these crushed, old, dirty, bad cars, and then they couldn't get a job. So they continued fixing cars in a dark garage.
And they tried to make a living out of it.
And they're trying to make a living out of that. That was the image of entrepreneurship that I was growing up with.
Mm. Where were you born? In Helsinki?
In Helsinki, yeah.
Anyway, so the capital still a place that it's international and
Back then it was not international. No, we didn't really have foreigners living in Finland. Mm. And not even in the capital area, except some Russians.
Mm. Yeah.
And of course some Swedes, but it was very little. And the whole city was very different. And we didn't have tech companies in Finland.
Mm.
Nokia was not a tech company back then. There was one company that was thought of as a tech company, that was Vaisala.
Mm. What was Vaisala making?
Vaisala was making equipment for basically weather forecasting. Sort of these sensors that balloons take up into the atmosphere.
Yeah, to take measurements.
Yeah. But that was basically the only international tech company in the country, and there was zero VCs. There were no software companies,
so no investments.
No investors.
Yeah. Crazy to think that Finland has now anyway the fame of a technology, gaming, innovation country, and how.
Well, Finland has truly transformed, and I have been lucky enough to witness and be part of that transformation. And actually, I took it almost like my personal mission to do what I can to make entrepreneurship respected in Finland, and especially high-tech entrepreneurship. The reason why high-tech is so important is that it's by far the biggest value generator in our world. And let me just give you a couple numbers, and then I'll get back to my who am I. And this is very important for Finland and other countries at the moment, because if we, especially in Europe, where we are less hungry and less entrepreneurial than many other regions, and it means that the wealth we are generating here is growing much slower than in many other regions. So we need to understand in what areas should we focus on so that the value generation is the biggest possible.
Is it a competition? Do you think that it's a kind of a competition, or is it for survival, or?
Well, if you don't generate value, then people, the population, will start to feel that we are sort of degrading, we are going backwards. My parents were wealthier than I am, and their parents were wealthier than they were. So I'm going downwards.
That's
and then people become unhappy. And that creates political unrest. It almost requires you to find somebody else whose fault it is that I'm doing worse than my parents. And then you need an external enemy.
As we unfortunately see.
As we see in some countries.
And in Finland also.
And even in Finland. And actually most Western democracies
they
are facing the same thing.
Yeah.
And because of the same reason. A sizable portion of the population feels that they are doing worse than they should, and they don't want to look into the mirror, think that it's my responsibility and it's my fault if I am doing like that. It's much easier to find somebody else whose fault it is.
Maybe then, but then if the society in this economical situation implies that you are a bit powerless, because anyway the big transformation, it takes a lot. Maybe you're not responsible for the situation, but for staying stuck in the situation.
Yeah, it's being responsible it's hard to blame anybody like that, and we shouldn't do that. But still, if you compare, say, Finland to the entrepreneurial scene, say in China, especially a few years back, everybody was feeling that only the sky is the limit. I can achieve whatever I want. I need to study hard. I need to be very competitive. I need to work super hard, but I can make it.
Yeah,
but
some sort
in
of
Finland,
chasing.
It's a little bit like, if I don't, want to work hard, I don't have to, because the government will support me, and I'm entitled to study until I'm 35 if I want. I don't need to work.
True.
And I can have a nice life without, going the extra mile. And I'm not saying that that's inherently wrong. I'm just saying that it's a very different way of thinking than in some other areas. And the problem is that if we think like that, it will mean that we are not generating the same value that others are. And then we start to feel that we are being badly treated. And then we need to find an explanation, somebody to blame. And then our society will be torn apart. So it's much easier to keep people happy if we are all striving forward. And how do you generate that culture? That's the challenge in Europe. But getting back to the value generation, if we take all publicly listed tech companies and look at the last 10 years, the value of all these tech companies globally has increased almost tenfold. And in that same time, the value of all other publicly listed companies globally has increased by about 40%. So 1.4 times as opposed to 10 times. And the point here is that if we want to take part of the value generation over the next 10 years, when I believe that the tech companies will generate value even faster compared to other companies.
It's exponential.
It is, or it has been, and it will continue to be like that for a while. Then our politicians should feel that it's their primary objective to make sure that the country that they are responsible for is well equipped to create and generate tech companies, but also apply technology in an efficient way. Because it's not just creating the tech companies, the tech is valuable for everything we do. Like we have been discussing AI over the last years and months.
Big topic.
And that applies to everything human beings do. So my belief is that tech companies are important for the well-being, mentally and physically, of Finnish people or people in Finland, no matter where they have come from, and in Europe in general. This is understood in Silicon Valley and in Beijing and Shanghai and Shenzhen.
Yeah, because the ripples of the effect, they affect the society and they mean well-being for the people, and then people start to belong to the country and do well and feel well. So of course it raises. I understand this concept absolutely. So we go still one step back, because in such a situation, I guess your parents were not entrepreneurs. You didn't learn this entrepreneurship model from your parents. And you were saying that the situation in Finland was so that entrepreneurship was not valued. But still, in the middle of your studies, or at least while studying, at 21, you decided to, well, you were quite brave and you launched yourself into something, F-Secure. How?
Yeah, I was not actually very brave, because what I was doing is I was providing sort of consulting services to IT departments, and just continued doing that through a company. So no investments, no R&D, nothing. It was just services. But I had a dream from when I was a young teenager, when I wanted to create the best computer game, Dungeons and Dragons game in the world, because it was such a fascinating concept back then, when just calling to a different country was complicated and very, very expensive, and traveling was not nearly as ordinary as it is today.
It's pretty common today. Yeah.
The idea that somebody would use a product that I have made on the other side of the world, like somebody in Japan would be playing a game that I have created. It was such a fascinating concept for somebody who didn't travel, who didn't have foreign friends, who didn't call abroad.
You didn't know the places even.
Exactly. I maybe saw a TV program about Japan and the United States once every quarter. So it was such a fascinating concept that it sort of became my dream that I could create something that would be used globally. And then when I had this consulting company, which was doing quite well, so we started investing every single mark that we earned into R&D in cybersecurity. And I wrote a book about cybersecurity with one of my colleagues, and my first employee also wrote independently a book about cybersecurity. And we sort of accidentally ended up investing into cybersecurity R&D.
Why did you see at that time that cybersecurity was crucial?
I didn't. I just saw that it's fascinating.
Yeah, okay.
And I was always reading science fiction. And there was an author called Gibson who came up with the sort of the cyberpunk kind of a scenario. This internet universe where almost like in virtual reality you can go into it, and the companies, you can see them and you can penetrate them and you can hack into them, and it's still science fiction, but we are very close to that today. Yeah. So this was a fascinating concept. It was just something that gave food to my imagination, and this was the big motivation for delving into it.
Yeah, and so you started building up, and you're talking about 3 people. You started R&D, and when did you, was it there was a point in which you understood that, like, okay, this is my thing and I'm doing this, or were you just all the time scouting? And how from something you scale it up to a public listed company?
Slowly, over the years. We started in '88, and it was not 3 people as such. The first person I hired was I put a note onto the notice board at the university where I studied that I'm looking for somebody to train people to use, I think it was project management software, because one of my customers wanted that, and then this guy applied. And maybe you have heard about Mikko Hyppönen.
I haven't. No.
He's a globally known cybersecurity expert, one of the best known Finns internationally, probably.
Okay.
But his older brother was the guy I hired first. And then Mikko joined a couple of years later. But anyway, hired him, then customers wanted more. I continued hiring, and we grew. And the more we did, the more we could hire R&D people. And we started doing antivirus software. And back then, computer viruses were a bit science fiction. So many CIOs that we went to trying to sell to them this antivirus product, they didn't believe that there are computer viruses.
Okay.
Some of them outright claimed that we are lying. We are misleading them. We're very angry. And how dare you come into my office spending my time
that is
feeding
not possible,
me this bullshit and trying to sell me a product that does nothing.
I guess they changed their mind by then now.
They have all changed their mind in just a few years. But the moment in time when I realized that this will become something meaningful was when we started getting orders from companies that I had never heard about.
So out from Finland or
from wherever.
Yeah.
I mean, originally it was a hard sell because you needed to convince somebody that there is this threat.
Yeah, the need is there.
And you may have to face that threat, and we have a solution. And then suddenly people that we had never heard about started ordering. Then I was like, okay, now we have a machine that starts to run by itself, and we just need to increase the revs, put more fuel into it, and grow faster. And we started selling internationally from the beginning via the internet, which was not the internet that we have today. This was a university network back then, but all these antivirus researchers were somehow linked to a university somewhere.
Yeah.
And we used that network to communicate and share the software updates, and they reported their sales back, and that's how we started growing. And for 11 years, almost 12 years, so almost 50 quarters, we grew every single quarter, and we were profitable every single quarter.
Wow.
And we grew at an average rate of about 80% every year.
Oh. Do you think the growth is due to your product, due to the fact that the market exploded and the need was there and was just generating and you were at the right time? Or what else was so differentiating? What was the key?
Well, the fact is that it's much easier to grow in a growing market.
Sure, yeah.
So if you are thinking about starting a company, think about the market. What's the real size of that market today, and what would it be in 3 years' time? And why do you believe it will grow that much? But if you find a growth market, it's much easier to grow yourself.
Yeah,
but of course, you can still fail. So you need to do a lot of things at least pretty well.
Exactly. If your software would have been pointless or not helping or crashing, or I'm pretty sure that you were...
Or your commercial terms, or your ability to partner, or your ability to provide technical support, the documentation you provide, the communication infrastructure for your partners. There's a lot of things that you have to do. The legal side of things, patents, a lot of things that you have to...
And this you've learned by doing.
Yeah. Because back then there were basically very few, if any, companies that we could recruit from. People who already were doing what we wanted to do.
Yeah.
So we basically had to train everybody.
Yeah, there were no experts on the market.
There was no experience
Yeah.
in the market. So this brings us sort of to one of the topics that you are keen on, because back then no universities were educating people in cybersecurity. It was such a new field that you couldn't study it. So some people were fascinated by the topic and they started just doing and learning by doing, but the number of these people was fairly low. In Finland, basically nobody, almost nobody. So of course we had to hire globally. Being a very small tech company, nobody knew us, and we tried to recruit from the United States, from Germany, from France, from Italy.
Yeah. Hello, I'm Risto. Do you want to come to Finland?
Yeah. But of course the way we recruited is through this network of people who were studying and consulting companies on cybersecurity. So we sort of knew each other. And when I found somebody who was a good expert, fairly easy to send an email to that person saying, "Hi, I'm Risto from Finland. We have a company called F-Secure. This is our product. Test it out. If you like it, come back and we'll talk more. We're looking for partners in Italy."
Yeah.
And that's how we got partners. But also, if you want to join our R&D, then Finland is actually a good place to live in, which was not necessarily quite true back then, but it was getting better.
Yeah.
And trying to recruit, and almost like being on my knees begging for people to give us a chance and give Finland a chance. And this is the background on which sort of I have always been so disappointed with our authorities making it difficult for people to move into Finland and live here and stay here. When I, as a taxpayer and creator of a company that pays a lot of taxes, I was on my knees begging for people to come, and then the authorities who should be helping me were actually trying to make it more difficult.
Yeah.
And this has continued on until today. Of course, things are much better now. But still, there are so many low-hanging fruits that could be done so much better. One early example was sometime in the early 90s, when we were already of a size that we sort of generated some interest and attention. There were stories in the newspapers and IT magazines and so forth. And I got to know the mayor of Espoo. And I went to meet her, telling her that my employees that I have had to beg on my knees to get them to work for us here in Finland, they have to go to the police station every 2 years to reapply for a work permit. And they feel like they are criminals. They have to go to the police station.
Accepted. Yeah.
Why is that? Because we are a good taxpayer for you. Our success is based on our ability to recruit good people. So why wouldn't you do the following? Appoint one person, 2 people who, based on a pre-agreed schedule, will visit the companies in Espoo employing people from outside Finland. And you know that for this person in 3 months, the current work permit will expire. So when you go to the company, you collect all these people whose work permits will be expiring over the next 6 months, and you can interview them there. So bring the service to them, because you show appreciation to the fact that they are working in Finland.
Yeah, they're bringing value.
And they will feel that they are appreciated. So it's a win-win.
Yeah.
And she was like, yeah, that makes so much sense. Absolutely, that's a wonderful idea. And nothing happened.
But that's politicians.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, I was just wondering, because anyway, you are a person that when he talks, people listen. You have a certain status in the society that anyway you can affect, and you can for sure make people think You can move on the chessboard the pieces. Maybe not fully, but are you actively involved in this kind of themes, topics? Is anyone asking like, what is actually the need of the company and how can we help companies into generating value? Or is it the political system and the discourse only at the level of like, I want to gain the voters and then I will do a mess, or then I don't do anything? Or is there something?
I have known most of the leading politicians over the last 20 years in Finland, having met them many, many times, having chaired government committees, having been a member in many of them, being lobbying for things that I believe are of value to Finland. And I can say that many of them are very knowledgeable, very smart, and they want the best for the country. But
I knew there was a but.
And everything before the but is bullshit. But not this time. I actually meant what I said.
Yeah.
But the problem is that they have grown into the political system of compromises. And they, unfortunately, at least many of them, are ready to make compromises where the most valuable outcome is compromised just because they feel that fighting it out is not worthwhile. It's not part of the political game. And the treatment of foreigners is one such topic. Many of them understand the importance and value, but they feel that they don't want to sort of stake their reputation on fighting on this topic. It's easy to hide in the crowd.
Yeah, I totally understand, but it's still the politician should represent the people and should also think about the society. And I think it goes against the meaning of the job to have an impact on the society and to bring it forward and to make it.
And to be re-elected.
Yeah, that I understand. But then if the crowd starts to move towards racism, then does it mean that then everyone has to start to preach the chorus and start to become everyone racist? I understand this, that it's easier to hide in the crowd, but we can see that the crowd has been changing over the year, and there are some more extreme, we see show of extreme ideas more publicly. And I think actually that someone that would go against or someone that would state his mind and speak loudly will actually also generate a lot of votes. But of course it depends which vote.
And we have those people.
Yeah, we have those people. Yeah, of course there is also opposition, and that's the game of politics. It's kind of like you play this chess. Once you are in opposition, you oppose.
But the positive side of things is that we have a lot of people who, and apologies for the coughing, I just had COVID a couple of weeks back and my voice is still down and I still
no problem.
Cough all the time. But anyway, we have politicians who really want the best for the country. They are visionaries or idealists in that way. But many of them learn too quickly to compromise and play the political game. And then we don't really make progress. And we don't experiment with ideas that are controversial.
Yeah, now here I can see the entrepreneur speaking, because anyway, that's part of the trial and error.
But look at Estonia. They are all the time experimenting. They are hungry for progress and they are proud of the way they have changed things and how they are innovating.
Sure.
And we don't have that same desire to be proud of the innovations we make societally.
We have the fear of making mistakes.
Yeah, we do.
if I compare to a company anyway, it is quite known that and you correct me if I'm wrong because you are the expert, but normally the agile system and changing to an agile attitude happens easier in a smaller company, or then if the company is fractured, or it is then one part it's taken the lead, small group to run this agile attitude of trial and error and improving. And probably Estonia, it is a small company in Europe. It is a small country. So maybe there is also this thing that it's easier to make agile moves.
Yeah, I don't think it's not that much about the size.
It's mental.
It's mental because when Estonia gained their independence from the Soviet Union, they felt that, hey, the world is open for us. We have been under the control of a oppressive system of governance, and now we can decide for ourselves. Now we can reach for our dreams. And they were not afraid. They were not afraid of making mistakes. They were ready to really change the way the country is managed, and they have continued to have that same philosophy and that same sort of feeling in the backs of their minds. And that's why they have all the IT infrastructure that they have for the public sector. That's why they have an e-citizenship. That's why they have a lot of things that we in Finland have only lately copied or are still only dreaming about. So I think it's just like with entrepreneurs, when you have that feeling of liberty, of reaching for the stars, then you can actually change things.
Yeah, that's a big attitude shift. But anyway, from my point of view, and I'm sure that there are statistics, I just know one thing, that the Finnish people are not big risk takers as a society. And then whether we say that maybe here we fear to make mistakes, it's probably the same as saying that we are not big risk takers. And I say myself as we anyway. I've been living here so long, but I heard during a talk at the university that in Finland, Finnish banks and Finnish hold in their accounts proportionally the most amount of liquidity compared to all the other European countries. So Finnish people hold liquidities, they don't invest them. They don't use them to produce other money, or they don't risk the money. So they keep their own wealth there standing and waiting for something.
In the savings accounts.
Yes, that doesn't give anything, or almost nothing. So it means anyway that there is a thick attitude of fearing, of losing, and putting the thing at stakes, like, okay, what is the gain? Do I risk to do something, some move, rather not, because I'm afraid of losing? So the attitude, I don't know where it comes from, because anyway, I'm discovering this culture every day and day by day. But there is something in believing in this dream that maybe doesn't belong that much to Finnish mentality. Maybe it's more an American chase the dream. Now you talk that Asia, it's behind the same kind of driving force, only the sky is the limit. But here, do we have an attitude problem?
I think it's a problem for the developed world. It's not a Finnish problem. It's a European problem. It's also an American problem to an extent. And the core reason, the root cause, is that we have felt that things are good enough. If we can just keep things as they are, it's fine. And when you start trying to keep things as they are, where everyone else is running as fast as they can, and you stand still or you walk at the same pace, proportionately or relatively speaking, you're losing.
Yeah. And it will take longer to catch up.
Yeah. In the United States, their social services, their social security, the safety networks are very sparse.
Yeah.
And this sort of forces people to be more self-standing and secure their own futures. And
Be
there's a high
active.
cost for this. I don't agree with the way the US system works. I don't think it's a good way of running it. But it forces people to be more accountable and more entrepreneurial. In the valley in California, the entrepreneurship is the mantra, but people who think that way, they move there from all over the world. So it's not sort of a local phenomenon. It's a concept that attracts similarly thinking people from all over the world. Then you go into Midwest and it's a very different thing. But in Europe, in France, in Italy, people generally feel that they used to think that things are good enough. And then things got worse. And now they are thinking, or many of them are thinking, that things are not good enough. And whose fault is that?
So you think that too much well-being has made people lazy?
Yeah, complacent.
And it is a human trait. It's a way we are just built in. We lean into comfort. Yeah, I agree with you in the sense that, like, I would not. I have been getting all the good sides of Finland and the Finnish social system, from health to all the other cares. I have 3 kids, so education and all the stuff. So I think that it's amazing. It's great. It definitely makes life better, and it makes you feel that life is better. That's also important, and how you are satisfied with it. But I understand. I come from a family, a way of being raised up that too much comfort makes you lazy, and you have to fight for the things. So I understand this. Then and the American situation, it is, I think, quite toxic in the sense that, like, if you fall from the grid, you're just by yourself. And then you second guess and you start thinking, like, how much do they value human beings? Because then the people suffering there are people that they are alone, they don't have resources, they have, I'm sure you know that they have huge problems of people living in tents and without homes. And then it's again, they are generating huge amount of billions with huge tech companies. So there is, like, the division, it's huge from top to bottom. But again, we don't want to ruin the Finnish system. We want to improve it. We want to build on this. And this is your entrepreneurship, like, your vision.
And I think we have been able to move pretty far on that vision. Back in the 90s, when F-Secure was young and Finland was in the grips of the worst recession ever in the country's history, all the banks were pretty much bankrupt, and it was impossible to get funding for tech companies and so forth and so forth. I felt that if during my lifetime tech entrepreneurship will become a sexy thing to such an extent that the leaders of the large companies, this old establishment, will feel that they have to have their own sort of portfolio of tech companies that they are personally supporting, being a board member and investor and becoming business angels, then we have actually accomplished something. And for the last 10 years, this has been reality. We have had many tech success stories. Tech entrepreneurship has become desirable for university students. We have a great entrepreneurial movement in the Aalto University for the students and faculty. And the Finnish sort of establishment members, the CEOs of the largest companies, they have started spending their time with startups, and they have started to understand the value of the innovation that small growth companies can create. And we have lots of VCs in Finland. We have a huge number of business angels who are creating a competitive environment so that when you start a startup and you have some credibility because of your background, you can choose who is allowed to invest in your company.
Yeah, the tables have turned.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a great achievement and progress.
But in that, yes, then the prize goes to Finland, because anyway, as you see, you said like university are allowing this, and this environment for entrepreneurship and for discovering technology and pushing forward. It has a place to happen, and it is generating. So you said that you didn't have people, they didn't learn anything about cybersecurity in university. Everything started from a really crude baseline, but there was nothing, and now we are here. So also like government has updated and programs have updated. So it has generated a transformation through all Finland. And
but
that's
some things have
allowing
stayed
the
same.
future.
Some things have stayed the same, like with Secure and F-Secure, we are still forced, and I'm saying forced in quotes, to recruit globally because Finland just doesn't have enough talent. And even if there are university courses in cybersecurity, the number of participants is very small. So there's just not enough expertise in the country. We couldn't survive without being able to bring talent into Finland from all over the world.
But the IT talent problem, it is all Europe as the same problem, right? So not only Finland. Why do you think there are so few people applying or studying such subject?
I think it's part of the same phenomena that we have discussed during this dialogue. It's not important to pick professions that create sort of monetary value when everybody is doing quite well. If you look at China and South Korea and many of these countries, the number of people who take engineering and math is huge. Their parents force them. The parents force them to study math because the parents believe that that's the best way to create wealth, which is important to the parents as well when they retire. Whereas in countries that are doing quite well, the parents are not forcing their kids to do anything they don't want to.
Yeah, it's I come from that background because my parents they have for sure planned in a way my life, or at least part of it, because of course then I moved to Finland that they didn't plan. But I went to normal school, then I went to a technical high school, and then I went to a scientific university, and then a master. So because it was kind of like my father is a lawyer, my mom a doctor, and the thing were pretty easy. Either you go somewhere in the government working, or you are working in a company, or you are a doctor or an engineer, or then otherwise kind of like you are a loser. And that was my upbringing. But that doesn't and didn't make me happier. Of course, this is kind of a funny question then, and maybe too deep, but who are the people then forced to do this kind of choices? I have to go into math, I have to go into IT, because then I will be, are these people happier and generating a happy society? If we were talking about the fact that but investing in tech, or at least creating more values, and tech brings more value, creating more values in the society will help society to be healthier and happier. But do we want to push people to go towards tech direction and then being burned out or unhappy?
I don't think it's mandatory to burn out if you are in IT. You can have a happy life in IT as well. So my personal philosophy is that you can be happy doing almost anything. And the reason why I'm saying is that when I was a teenager, for several years I worked in a butcher's shop selling meat. And I enjoyed that. It was difficult enough, or there was enough to learn to keep me motivated. Probably not if I had spent my whole life doing that. But for those years, I felt that I was learning and becoming better at that. And it motivated me. So I do believe that anything where you can learn and become better is potentially rewarding for you. And if in IT you feel that you are doing well, you are learning, you are becoming better, I think most people would find satisfaction from that.
Yeah, it's self-rewarding.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Martela, Frank Martela, one Finnish philosopher, has part of this topic about inner motivation that gives you anyway the drive to be well and to enjoy your work. One of the three main points is the fact that the challenges should be always a bit bigger, and you should achieve them, and you can see that you are growing in the role and you are actually growing as a person in the task. So I totally understand, and it's all separated from the fact that what is the task, because you can be cutting meat or building a house or building a software. As long as you can feel that you are progressing, you will like what you're doing. So absolutely, it's I understand that philosophical side of it, and I sign for it. I'm into that.
And I think it's the organization's responsibility to provide these learning opportunities for their employees. And in one of the companies where I'm involved in, their sort of slogan is that they create the best learning platform. And that's the main attraction for talented people to join them, because they will become even more talented working for them. So they can get better people who will become better faster than in other companies, because they have created the best learning platform. And I completely buy into that philosophy. Doesn't apply to every single person out there.
Sure.
But for many, being able to improve yourself is the highest source of motivation. And if you can attract those type of people, then your company will be successful almost by definition.
Yes, of course, they bring together and they join the force, and they push forward the mission or the product of the company.
And then you join a place where there's lots of talent, so you can learn from your colleagues. You can see how hard they drive forward, and it encourages you to do the same, which means that you will be improving yourself, and you feel motivation through that.
Yeah, talent attraction, it's a really difficult topic in the IT, so I guess that also helps to differentiate from everyone that is just like bringing up money or all the benefits. That it's something that people, well, at least I understand the fact that, like, if I can grow my value in a company, in a situation, doing a project, that will stick with me forever, even if I change country or place to work or whatever. So it's a value that you will bring with you forever.
And it helps so much if you feel that you are joining a mission that is close to your heart. Like in cybersecurity, it's this battle between good and evil.
Yes.
Law and order against crime.
Intruder and
defender versus the attacker or aggressor. And you can really feel that you are, every day you go to the office, you work on the side of good. You are helping somebody who is in distress or has a problem. And that's a good feeling. And you don't get that feeling in all industries.
Yeah, absolutely true. Absolutely true. Of course, not everyone has the ability, or anyone is born with a set of cards. So I guess that not everyone can achieve everything.
Yeah, not everybody has to be in cybersecurity. Well, let's take another example of the companies that I'm involved in. company called Quanscient. They do sort of multi-physics simulations. The problem for many of the most advanced R&D projects in the physical world is the long cycles and difficult testing procedures. If you could test everything in a simulated environment and then only prove things in the real life, once you already know that this product works, you could cut down the R&D cycles and by costs, 90% and costs and risks and everything. So they are pioneers in that. But they have developed everything to fit quantum computing. Even if it's not really here today, they have designed everything to work in quantum computers. And for them, that is the mission. Change the world, make the world a better place by providing the ability to create these sort of digital twins where you can design things and test them without doing it in the real world, enabling things that were never possible before, and also be in the quantum revolution at the same time.
Yeah, the edge of what the technology is.
Exactly, and that's a very different mission from cybersecurity, but it's something that speaks to them. And when you have that, whatever it is, in your company, then you just find people to whom that mission speaks loudly.
It resonates with them. How have you always been this? You have clearly a mission that goes over you and carries forward even without you. Hopefully, someone will continue and you will continue. But have you always been like this? Because there is almost no trace of ego boosting in all this. Even if anyway, I guess you were really young and you started building. You started having success. Anyway, you said that the company generated sales without actively even doing, and these 50 quarters of growth in a row. Anyway, you always speak about this, that the good the company has done for the clients, for the society, bringing people in, and the well-being of the people. And how this didn't become a thing of Risto, but it was a bigger picture. Where have you always been like this?
Success is toxic.
Exactly. And you can see some people that they stand then behind it, and the success almost seems that it stick to the person. Of course, there are big egos. We see big persons from Elon Musk to other. Of course, they might not be arrogant, but they still are egocentric, and seems that they have a company, but that's the person. The person is always the key factor. So how it didn't go that way?
Well, I think for everybody, I don't think there's anybody who can avoid the toxicity of success to some extent. And I definitely have not avoided it. But it's a learning experience. You just need to avoid sort of big mistakes in the ego department, make small mistakes and learn from them.
You're agile also in the mistake making.
Yeah, and also in the ego dimension. So when you do something that you realize afterwards that was pretty arrogant, and then you feel ashamed, how could I be that stupid, or that blind, or that intoxicated by your own success, then you learn. And I have been doing this for over 30 years, and I think I have learned quite a bit. But I still need to sort of try to be on guard.
That it doesn't raise to your head.
Yeah, I don't think there's much risk of that anymore, because nowadays I have about 50 companies that I work with. Exactly. I have invested in helping to found them and grow them. But I'm always a sort of a sideline supporter. I'm not the central person in any of these.
Mm.
And therefore, I don't think there's much risk to my ego anymore because there's somebody else who is in the limelight.
Yeah.
And I like it that way. I'd much rather push 50 companies forward than be only involved in one where I would be the central person. I have done that and tried it, and it's
went
lots
well.
of fun.
Yeah.
But your impact is limited to that one game. And
Yeah.
you're not learning as much. I'm really a learning addict. I
can see
really
that,
enjoy
yes.
learning new
Yeah,
things.
I can see that, because for sure in all these 50 companies, they might have really different profiles, really
Very
different
different.
segments, sectors. So I guess that you are learning and getting from one to the other place. You're getting things, and that also probably most likely part of the success, because you start seeing trends, you start seeing things that should go in a way, or you start seeing like how something can be applied from one environment to the other, from one sector to the other. So that for sure brings extra value. But I was thinking, when I was thinking about this interview, I was thinking like, how does Risto's days look like? What is like? Because if you try to search for your name, there is, I mean, if I would have made a list of all the companies you are involved, of everything you do, I would have spent 1 month and I would have 6 pages of stuff. So it's kind of like, how do you manage your time?
It is true that my time is very fragmented because it's divided between the 50 companies, number of government projects, number of
European projects.
Yeah, all sorts of things, universities or the academia, the companies, the governments, the whatever hobbies I might have.
Yes, maybe you have also people you care about, and there is a lot.
But then that's only one perspective. If you are a CEO of a company, what is your day like? You may get up in the morning, you read reports of sales happening all over the world. The next thing you do is it's a photo shoot for a media. Then the next thing you do is you interview a new recruit that you want to hire. Then the next thing is you go and talk to all hands meeting to your people about the previous quarter. Then the next meeting is a company that you are trying to buy, and you talk to the founder of that company. Then the next meeting is with an investor that has invested in your company, and your time is very fragmented.
Yeah.
And for me, the company that I manage is basically me. And if you look at it from a certain perspective, my time is very fragmented. If you look at it from the other perspective, it's just what this job requires. I'm doing the things that this job requires, and it's not fragmented.
Your company required.
Yeah, it's
you.
I'm my company.
You are your company, yeah.
And from that point of view, it all makes sense, and it's not fragmented. It's all interlinked and connected, and
because then also your activities, your well-being, your sports, or your people, they all are part of the same big ecosystem that it's you.
And my philosophy in helping young companies or growth companies and investing in them is that I'm trying to act in such a way that sort of I'm increasing my own happiness. And how do I increase my own happiness? By working with happy people. Working with people who are learning, who are making progress, who are becoming successful, that brings happiness to me. All kinds of conflicts, arguments, fights, they strongly take away from the happiness I have. So if I'm investing into a company, the happiness of the founder is important for me because it improves my own happiness. So I'm trying to understand, what does the founder want? Not the company, the founder. And how can I, and do I want to help that founder get what he or she wants?
What they're
And
after.
if it sort of is aligned with my own values, then I'll sign on to support that founder for as long as it takes. And it's really rewarding to work with smart, driven people who have good values and who are improving themselves.
Mm.
It's lots of fun, really motivating.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see that. I can see it.
So I'm not the typical investor that wants to make the biggest return.
Mm.
The big returns, which I have been lucky enough to get, having helped so far 5 unicorns in Finland
Congratulations.
to grow and become successful, that's an outcome. It's not,
it's not the goal.
Objective.
Yeah, it's not the main goal. Yeah. Yeah, of course, because you can also kill the company trying to get as fast as possible the best outcome,
Yeah,
monetary.
I'd be very happy to support a company that becomes moderately successful, that plays some sort of important role in society or for their customers, having good, happy customers that feel you are providing a valuable service. That's okay. They don't need to become unicorns. They don't need to sell the company. I'm happy being a shareholder for 20 years.
Yeah.
Whereas a typical VC will always exit.
Yeah, jump off and get the bag of money. So you're mission driven and entrepreneurship, it's one of your missions. Do you have other missions?
No, actually, I think that is my mission. You can't have many missions.
Well, happiness, the fact that you are talking about this happy people and helping people, anyway, you gravitate towards that also. So
and they are all interlinked, of course. But if you have to pick one angle to describe what drives you and what has driven you for decades, it has been the sort of tech entrepreneurship in Europe. That has been the theme for me. And now things are in a much better shape, but I don't feel that I should come up with a new mission. I think we can still grow much more and just climb higher.
Yeah, I don't see the sky is the limit with the concept of entrepreneurship, and extended, as we said, that the impact that it has to society and to people. So it is quite a big concept. When was the moment in which you decided to step away from F-Secure, and why?
Well, it was in 2006. I had been the CEO of the company for 18 years, and I was really feeling that I was not learning anymore. I had been in the same role, in the same job for 18 years, and I just felt that I need a change. And then I started spending much more time investing into tech companies, but also took a step onto the corporate side. I became a board member and chairman of Elisa, the Finnish teleoperator, or the Baltic Finnish Nordic teleoperator, which is, in my opinion, the best domestic teleoperator in Europe over the last 20 years.
Okay.
Really great company.
So the company itself, as it is managed.
Yeah, the way it has performed, the way it has grown, improved its profitability, and maybe more importantly, innovated. It has been a much more agile and innovative operator compared to any other domestic operator in Europe that I know of. But then I became a board member of Nokia, and then I became chairman of Nokia, and then I became CEO of Nokia for a little bit less than a year. And that was a wonderful adventure.
Yeah. Why did you take this adventure? What it was then the motivation? Is it learning again?
Yeah. Nokia was my hero. Nokia was the company that created the self-confidence for me as a tech entrepreneur to go out Finland. There saying that I come from a Finnish company.
Yeah.
And we come from Nokia land.
Exactly, yeah.
The importance of Nokia's success to my entrepreneurial career cannot be exaggerated. It had a huge impact. So when I had the opportunity to join the board of Nokia, I mean, I was in seventh heaven.
A dream came true.
Absolutely, a dream came true, and also the ability to learn from the best.
Mm.
How do you run a company like Nokia?
Mm.
Unfortunately, Nokia's downfall started at that same time. I became a board member in 2008, and iPhone came out then, and then Android came out a few months later, 6 months later, and the downfall had started.
Mm.
So I didn't get to enjoy being at the top of the world as much as being sort of flabbergasted by the speed of the downfall.
Yeah.
And then I was asked to become the chairman in 2012, and then the company was in big trouble.
Yeah.
And
Losing billions.
yeah, and basically sliding towards an early grave.
Mm.
But how can you refuse when sort of duty calls at a tough time?
Oh, well, there are many examples for sure of people jumping ship when the ship is falling down. So I understand the drive you have, and I understand that when Nokia was your dream, or like it meant for you so much. For sure, it was a dream when you could access the board and be part of it. And I guess also you got attached to the sad story that the Nokia was seeing and how things were going down. So I guess you also felt that you are now not only helping Nokia, you're helping all the ecosystem, every single Finnish and Finland.
Yeah, and I never doubted that Nokia would not survive. Even when logic dictated that it probably would not survive, I never doubted it. And that's part of entrepreneurship. You believe.
So it wasn't intrinsic in the company and company values or in the company copyrights or on the technology. It was something more of your feeling that Nokia will be successful.
Well, I think it's absolutely both.
Data-driven and feeling-driven.
The idea about the power of brands is that's emotional, and it can accomplish the impossible when people believe, when they have certain emotions attached to a concept, a brand, a company, a history. And Nokia had gone through a number of transformations, a number of almost bankruptcies in its history. And just the fact that we could tell our employees, all 100,000 of them, that, hey, this company has survived very, very tough situations before, several times. That gave some credibility to the claim that, hey, we will survive through this as well. And that gives people
hope,
confidence. And it's weird how strong a role that hope and that confidence can play when the going gets tough.
How did you turn this mentality? Of course, now we are saying that you showed people that the past speaks for the achievement and for these cycles. So of course you showed people that actually that Nokia is able. But what else did you do for the morale, for the feeling of the people?
Well, first of all, I did very little, but we did it all. A very large group of people who believed and who fought very hard, who never gave up. And the impact that I had in this was probably most felt in the idea that we considered a number of scenarios at all times, and we were playing this game of being prepared for any eventuality. That nothing can surprise us because we have thought about every scenario in advance, and we had some idea of what we would do in any given scenario. So we were much faster to act when something happened because we had already spent time thinking about our action plan for that scenario.
Yeah. And there comes the book name that you are a paranoid optimistic.
Yeah.
Paranoid thinking about all these scenarios. I guess that the word goes in there, but optimistic because you believed all the time that things will turn.
Yeah, sometime in 2005 or something like that, I was trying to think about what is my entrepreneurial philosophy. And then I don't remember anymore whether I heard somewhere or whether I came up with it myself, this concept of paranoid optimism. But when I got those two words, I was like, this is it. This perfectly describes the way I think and what I think is a good way for an entrepreneur to think like. And
to be prepared and prepare.
Yeah, and be brave enough to think about the bad outcomes, to prevent them, to reduce the likelihood for them. And that actually gives you reason to be optimistic, because you have thought about all the different scenarios and you have taken action to improve the likelihood of the good scenarios and decrease the likelihood of the bad scenarios. And then you can have faith. Things will turn out well. And it also makes it intellectually more rewarding.
Yeah, it's well, in some small, when I talk with some small entrepreneurs, they feel a lot of pressure. They feel that they are always in this kind of cycles, up and down. And you can see when someone is starting to, the fuse, it's burning short, because you see that they lose this attitude of being positive, that okay, things will turn out. So there is definitely a self-confidence within you that helps you also think that things will turn, because you've seen a lot of up and down, and that monster of a company is not so easy to turn around. So I guess that
Yeah.
it is really well said, but
sometimes a company that fails and disappears, it's not because of the management. It's just because of the market, because of the circumstances, because something that is beyond your control. So the most difficult thing is to know when to give up. And the sad thing is that if you think about, should I give up now? And then you decide not to, and you end up failing. You regret that, why didn't I stop earlier? I would have saved so much grief. And the other way around, if you decide to stop, you may regret forever that maybe I would have survived.
Maybe there was a light.
The turnaround was just around the corner. And you start regretting things.
Yeah, but you've chosen anyway to try. I guess you've frequently chosen to try. So anyway, there is a risk in that.
Yeah, but my point is just that there's no way to be perfect in timing, and you shouldn't even try. This applies to the stock market, this applies to currencies, this applies to entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
So don't try to be perfectly correct on timing. Just sort of play with the averages.
Yeah, that's quite a engineer way of thinking the problem. You're cutting it in pieces to manage it, and I understand. And of course, this point that anyway, regardless of the choice you make, whether you continue or you jump ship, regret can kick in. So it's kind of like the outcome can be the same for yourself, that you can still regret either or choice.
And the most important thing is that you choose. You don't just sort of drift, but you decide.
And you act on that.
Yeah. If you decide to continue, like you have an employee, a key employee that is, let's say, making some decisions that are not made with full integrity. And then you have to decide whether to let that person go or give that person a second chance. Just make that decision and don't look back. And then if 6 months later you have to let that person go because he or she continues to make decisions that don't have full integrity, then you just do that right away.
Yeah.
Because then you have another decision-making point, and then you will make a different decision. But don't regret what you did 6 months ago. You did it based on the best information that you had.
You separate the two decisions as two different independent decisions. Yeah. I read the book about Nokia. Was it your idea to write it?
It was my idea. Well, many people suggested that, of course. But the main motivation for me to write it was to understand what happened.
You yourself?
Yeah, because I didn't understand what happened.
Well, it ended up well.
Yeah, it ended up okay. But of course it would have been nice if Nokia would be in the position that Apple is nowadays.
Of course.
I think it would have been nice. I'm not 100% sure, because success is toxic.
Yeah.
And Nokia was already too big for Finland. And if we would be a $1 trillion company, $2 trillion company, a Finnish company, that might have some toxic side effects. But never mind. I wanted to reflect back and learn. And learning is an active thing. It's an action that you decide to take. You don't learn if you just sort of sail through events and you never stop to reflect. Reflection is hard work. So I wanted to gain that learning. And one of the best ways, two good ways to learn. One is to teach others.
Sure.
And one is to write a book, which is a way of teaching others. So basically there's only one way to learn, that is teaching others.
Yeah.
Or one efficient way. So I really wanted to go through the mental exercise of analyzing what happened, why it happened, what could have been done differently. And once we had published the book, then a large number of people related to Nokia got in touch with me, and I learned even more.
So from their perspective of the story?
From what they added, the data points that they shared with me, motivated by the book that I had written. And we could talk about technology disruptions, which is basically what Nokia experienced.
Yeah.
But that would be another podcast. So
I don't know.
Another time.
No. We're going. I don't know. We go forward because still on the topic of Nokia, that when I read the book, I thought that anyway it was for you, okay, a way to think about, but it became almost like a manual for the way of thinking for other people, at least for me, and how to address these kind of problems and transformations. So I think it falls, and I was thinking this, like, was the purpose of it to be a teaching tool about entrepreneurship? Because anyway, you are always facing risks, you're always facing scenarios where they go downward or upward. So it's kind of like probably there is a bottom line in the book that it's the stories about Nokia, but the story is about a way to address problems and to run a company, generally speaking.
Address problems and opportunities.
And opportunities, absolutely.
Yeah, if I would have only written the book to understand what happened, that would have been a very selfish thing to do. And who would want to read something which is aimed to help the author only?
Yeah.
So, of course, I tried to write it in such a way that it would be helpful, which is exactly what you are talking about. So I wrote it to share what I think works and also what doesn't work. so that it would be helpful to others.
Mm.
And that has been the most rewarding thing, getting these messages from hundreds of people who have shared how some of the lessons that I had learned and shared in the book have helped them in running their companies.
Yeah.
And that's so rewarding.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. So can we address still, because you are at the front edge of technology development, innovation, programming, and AI, it's such a cool, hot topic. And I want to know from you, what's your thought about it? What do you see at the fringe of the segment and innovation? And do you have worries? Do you have this paranoism, optimistic paranoism on the AI also?
Mm. Yeah. The thing that the large language models have shown us is worrisome.
ChatGPT.
GPT type solutions, which basically do exactly what we have done here.
Mm.
When I start a sentence, I don't know how it will end.
Mm.
In real time, I figure out what should be the next word in the sentence.
True.
And a large language model does exactly the same thing. It starts with a word and then it predicts the next word.
Mm.
And it doesn't know what will be the final word in that sentence.
Mm.
And how do we start the next sentence. And basically, the LLM thinks like a human being with some algorithmic differences.
Mm.
But at a high level, it thinks like a human being. The difference being that it is a bit of an alien process that we don't fully understand, but we don't understand our brains either.
True.
So in that sense,
Yeah.
it's sort of similar as well. And it is equally different to control than the way a human being thinks. So if we give a human being unlimited power, it's a risk. If we give an AI unlimited power, it is a risk. And the way AI can get more power than a human being is through its capacity to do so much more, to be so much faster, so much, multitasking compared to a human being. The ability to be an expert in everything, whereas a human being cannot be an expert in many things. And then you can connect an AI system to hundreds of thousands or millions of real-world machines, valves, locks, engines.
Under the command.
All controlled by one or many AI systems. Of course, to gain more efficiency, better quality, increase safety, all good objectives. But then what if something goes wrong? What if the mission given to the AI somehow leads to unexpected outcomes?
You know that it seems that you are describing Terminator movie.
Yeah.
And
a naive example of this has been this paperclip scenario. I don't know if you have heard it. It's naive. It's very well known, but the idea is that you create an AI system that has an objective of creating paperclips, as many of them as possible, as cheaply as possible. And it tries to do that job as well as it can, and basically starts to view the whole world as a resource pool, humans included. And if it can slave people, or if it can use people as raw material to make paperclips, it would, because its mission is to make paperclips.
Yeah.
And if all the factories on Earth would only make paperclips, it would be very happy, regardless of the unintended side effects, i.e. there's no food anymore and there's no clothing and there's there's nothing. There's no energy except for paperclip manufacturing. So this is naive and exaggerated, but there's an inkling of truth in it. This similar thing on a much more nuanced way could happen. And we need to be very careful in a couple of things. One is connecting AI systems into real world affecting machines. And the second one is allowing an AI system automatically code itself.
But that is happening already.
Not really.
Well, I'm not that expert.
In a very limited fashion, yes, but still not really.
And then the application of AI on our general life, well, self-driving cars, they are doing that.
Yeah, in a very limited way again.
But that's the point, that the technology is exponentially growing, and this machine are learning day and night, and then they're learning from other learnings.
But self-driving car has a very limited purpose, and just wants to get you from A to B as rapidly and as safely as possible. It's not feasible for it to start looking for world domination. It won't happen.
Yes, well,
but then
hopefully.
An LLM is an example of something that is very, very generic. It has read all the literature in the world. It can talk to you about anything. And just the same way as it puts words one after another, it could put actions one after the other. And these actions could all influence the real world. And there it's much more difficult to say what its objectives would be.
And the objectives are normally coded into the system.
And in this case, they are not coded. Just like the sentences that the LLM generates are not coded. It's generated based on the training that it has received. And what I think will happen is that for any sort of AI system affecting the real world, we'll have at least one AI system monitoring the actions that the first AI system does. And this second AI system has the ability to prevent any of those actions. So it's very easy it's very feasible to train a control AI to analyze whether the actions of any actor, be it human or machine, are positive or negative based on a number of criteria. And then it can prevent the actions that it deems are negative.
You want police AI?
I mean, cybersecurity, there are attackers that use AI, and we use defensive AI. And it's always a battle or a race, both sides trying to improve as rapidly as possible. So the idea of a control AI looking at the actions of any normal AI, it's a very logical one.
Yeah, okay, it's again a cat and dog fight. That like it is a police.
Tom and Jerry.
Policing, Tom and Jerry, one's policing. But it is scary anyway that you have this. Anyway, there is talk about the fourth industrial revolution because of all this, and putting AI, robotic, deep learning. So we're going towards another big societal change. And then we face this kind of security problems, because now we're talking about security problems for our own well-being. And of course there can be the Terminator scenario, but it can be all sort of, because the Terminator was supposed to be conscious. But anyway, do you think government should have a role in this game? And how is our government in this game? Should we have law? Should we have boundaries for the usage, for the development?
Well, EU is once again acting based on its role as a regulatory superpower and has come up with AI-related regulation with good intentions but also negative side effects. And this is really the challenge globally. AI is very much a key ingredient for competitiveness. AI feeds on data, which is limited by privacy regulation. And Europe has stricter privacy regulations than any other economic area. We also have AI regulation that limits the way AI can be used. And that may mean, and it does mean, that for any global company that wants to do AI-related R&D, it doesn't really make sense to do it in Europe.
Okay, yeah, you see, so the money is fleeing away from here.
And therefore, the competence people are moving somewhere where they can do cutting-edge research. And this is not in our interests. At the same time, making sure that AI is being developed in a human, sustainable way is important. But if we are the only one doing it that way, then we are just losing.
Yeah, we're lagging behind again.
Yeah. And this is a very difficult dilemma for the political decision makers and the regulators. Europe has been missing out because of being too cautious. But at the same time, I do understand that there are certain aspects of AI where we need to be cautious.
Yeah, you see them yourself.
But the politicians and the regulators need the expertise to differentiate between the areas where we need to move fast and we need to enable this R&D work and research work. And then the areas where we should be cautious. And we have very few politicians who are technology experts.
Exactly, because that is at the front. And do they ask for your consultancy on these topics? Politicians?
Yeah, politicians like to start different kinds of working groups that come up with a report in a year's time or 18 months' time. But that's an eternity in business and in
the development
academia.
of technology. Yeah.
So the real problem is that technology continues to accelerate because of many of the fundamental core technologies are exponentially developing, like semiconductors have been for the last 50 years. And we know that more or less continues. The regulatory process that is supposed to control the use of technology is a slowing process. So we have an exponentially accelerating process that is controlled by a decelerating regulatory process.
Yeah, they wake up to the problem once the problem is already gone.
Or we try to regulate it before the fact, which is what Europe has more or less been doing. And we come up with, let's say, GDPR regulation, privacy regulation. And when we announce it, the world has moved on. The regulation was designed 3 years earlier. And because of the slowness of the process, it's approved 3 years later. But the world has changed. So when I was in Brussels training the commissioners on machine learning, this was 5 months before GDPR came into effect. And in that session, I told them that, hey, you should update GDPR. It's out of date. And they were like, it's not even active
Approved,
yet.
Yes.
So I said, that is technology for you. Things are changing. And you need to change the regulatory process as well.
To be at the same pace, at least at a feasible pace.
Yeah, at least for certain aspects of regulation, you should have the practice of reviewing the need to update even new regulation. You should do that review on an annual basis. And then you should have some sort of a fast lane
Yeah.
for
To handle the paper.
fairly small changes and updates. Of course, if you completely rewrite it, then it becomes or gets back to that old process.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we need to come up with new ways of thinking about regulation because the world is changed.
Yeah, bureaucracy has never been fast, and then I guess at the European level it's even slower, having so many participants. Risto, how can you inspire people with a small final talk about entrepreneurship and believing that actually things can turn out good? And how can you channel your positivism to others?
You tell me. I think we all need to do what we can, and sometimes it's not enough. Sometimes it inspires one person, and that's a good outcome. Sometimes we can help a lot of people, and then the next day we try to do the same thing again. And I'm just trying to find ways to take things forward. And that's why when you asked me to join you here, this is part of what I do. Not because this is my job, but because I think we need to try to share what we think is important. And maybe it will change the way one person thinks. Maybe there's a politician or a civil servant who is listening to this and changes their attitude a little bit. And if we can just do more of that, then it accumulates and the world becomes a better place.
And it has a ripple effect.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm really pleased that you've been here and that you took your time for me. And I think that what strikes me, aside from how humble you are, and you see your achievement, it's the curiosity. I think that it's something that didn't come out as a word, but it's definitely, you talk about learning and how interesting it is to always progress and move forward. But I think curiosity is something, maybe the adjective that I would give to the type of brain you have, and probably even if this society might push people to become lazy or just allow people to be lazy, I think that then probably this curiosity of also understanding yourself and understanding the world around you might be one of the key factors that helped you to do all that you have done and to still do daily all the things you do.
Yeah, actually, curiosity is a very important word for me, even if it didn't come up. When I'm recruiting people, if somebody introduces themselves, when I ask, like, who are you as a person? Not your CV, but who are you? And they say that I've always been very curious. It's a big plus in my book. Because when you are curious, you typically learn. And you are in some way brave. Because you have to go into places where no one has been. When you're curious, what is there? What would happen if I press this button?
Yes.
And then you experiment. And that's, for an entrepreneur or for a leadership team member, that's a very important characteristic.
Yes.
So I'm happy you got that thought.
Yeah, I think it was clear for me, but yeah. Thank you, and hope everyone will enjoy as much as I did this conversation.
Thank you.
And maybe we talk another time.
Sounds good.
Yes. Bye.
Bye-bye.